We're here today to talk with two professionals who have managed to get it right. Debjani Biswas is a best-selling author and expert on diversity and inclusion. And Cynthia Nustad is Chief Strategy Officer for HMS. A former Chief Information Officer, Cynthia has successfully built diverse teams in an often homogeneous function. Welcome.
Thank you, Maria.
Debjani, your recent book, UsToo, is a practical guide for inclusion. Can you give us two examples from your books of how companies can increase diversity and inclusion in their organizations?
So one of the reasons that hashtag UsToo is so important to me is that hashtag MeToo uncovered a lot of broken systems, and we have to ask ourselves, how was this allowed to go on for so long in so many places, in so many functions all over the world?
Debjani, the hashtag UsToo it's an important concept because all too often I hear now where it's the Me Too movement, which is male versus female, and this is not a female issue. This is a all gender issue where all of us need to come together to explore diversity and get past that.
You know, Cynthia, I'm so glad you asked that because, so my background is engineering, and so the logical part of me says that we cannot talk about gender inclusion and exclude 50% of the population.
Yes.
Decent and honorable men and women have to solve the gender gap. And so that's why I called it hashtag UsToo.
That's so important. Let's go from opt-in to what we may be missing, Debjani. So, many times we talk about what companies are doing, but what are some of the things they may be missing in their inclusion and diversity programs?
Sometimes diversity and inclusion programs are more of a compliance check mark than an actual commitment. And so what I would say, in addition to what we've already discussed, and Cynthia gave great examples, is think of a time when you were made to feel just this small because you were different. And did you bring all your discretionary effort to work? And if we want our employees, ourselves, our leaders, to bring everything that they have to work, they must feel included, and we have to appreciate their differences. You know, there's 4 words I use: ask, accept, adapt, and appreciate. If we can remember those 4 A's, I call it the diversity 4A, that is a practical tool for us to just treat people. It's the platinum rule. The golden rule was treat others as you would want to be treated. The platinum rule is treat others as they want to be treated. And so that's what I would say is just people have to feel included.
I'm switching to the platinum rule. Let's talk a little bit about unrecognized bias, though. Yeah. I know that this is a topic that is coming up more recently, that there may be areas where we don't even understand that we have a bias. So give us some examples of that.
So unconscious and unrecognized bias is so predominant. I have to tell you, my bias, right? I write books for a living. I'm an equity professional. The first book that I wrote, I had every person in power. I used the pronoun he. And my editor said to me that this is just a sign of my unconscious bias. So for Miserably Successful No More, my second book, I sheed myself to death. So it's just recognizing we all have it, using emotional intelligence to uncover that bias, and then just ask, what is one thing I can do to make that bias just a little bit less?
Okay, great. That's a great segue, because we talked a little bit about how companies can improve inclusion and diversity. What about an individual contributor? Cynthia, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, and a good rule to live by is play in, right? I mean, if you are uncomfortable at the table, you don't think that you should be invited per se, you feel small, play in, play up, and then bring a hand to bring someone else along with you, right? Uncomfort is not the point to stop. Uncomfort is the point when you push through to belong on a team.
That's great. And Debjani, your advice?
I would say that individual contributors are probably the most vital because we are all leaders, and it's the small things. We're in a room where there's a lot of very excited, flaming extroverts, and there's one reflective introvert. Why don't we just say, hey, let's brainstorm in a way that every single person's voice gets heard? And that way we'll include the extroverts and the introverts. If we're in a cafeteria and there's a person from another culture just sitting by themselves, feeling awkward, just a statement, hey, why don't you come join us? It's the small things that really make a difference in being an exclusion exterminator or an inclusion catalyst or just not caring, and that's all the difference.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. For more information about diversity and inclusion, visit the Health Ideas page at hms.com.